5 things demons really fear about you, what they see in you, my friends. If you could see yourself as the enemy sees you, you would never again walk with your head bowed. The very beings that whisper of your weakness are themselves terrified of what you carry. They know what many of us have forgotten, that a single human soul, fully awakened, is more radiant than 1,000 suns. Let us speak, then, of 5 things that the powers of darkness fear most about you. There is a light within every human soul, ancient and indestructible, though many go their whole lives unaware of its brilliance. It is not born of mere temperament or optimism, nor is it kindled by human achievement. This light is of another realm entirely, placed within you at the dawn of your being, by the hand of the one who is light itself. To the untrained eye it seems invisible, but to spirits, both celestial and fallen, it blazes with a radiance that no veil can hide. Demons fear this light more than the sword of an angel, for it is a mark of divine ownership. They know that even the faintest glimmer of it declares to the cosmos that you do not belong to them. They fear not the darkness in you, for darkness is their native soil, but the light that refuses to be extinguished. When you stand in truth, when you love though wounded, when you speak mercy into cruelty, the light flares and they recoil. To them, a soul awakened to its own divine flame is a catastrophe, a living reminder of everything they abandoned. This light is not a decoration, it is a weapon. It exposes what hides in shadows, revealing the hollow pride of evil for what it truly is, impotence disguised as power. The enemy can mimic beauty, knowledge, and even goodness to some degree, but he cannot create light. He can only twist what already exists, never ignite what was never his. That is why he labors tirelessly to convince you that your light is dim or worthless. His greatest success is not in destroying the light, but in persuading you to cover it. The world often teaches concealment to dim your convictions for comfort, to silence your hope for acceptance, to trade wonder for cynicism. Each compromise, however small, is a thin veil over that inner flame. Yet the remarkable thing about this light is its defiance. It resists suffocation. Even when buried beneath shame or fear, it still glows faintly beneath the rubble, waiting for the breath of courage to stir it again. Demons cannot approach a person who walks consciously in that light. They may whisper, but they cannot dwell there. The radiance blinds them, scorches them. They see what we too easily forget, that light is not a metaphor but a force. It pierces realms, it breaks illusions, it reveals truth where deception once ruled. That is why every act of goodness, however small, carries more weight than you imagine. To give bread, to speak kindness, to forgive, these are not gestures of politeness, but flares of divine fire bursting into a dark world. The light within you is the echo of creation's first dawn, the same voice that said, "Let there be." It does not depend on mood or circumstance. It is eternal, woven into the essence of your being, and wherever it shines, darkness loses ground. Authority is a strange word to human ears. It often conjures images of power, dominance, and control, the sort of things that tyrants crave and good souls distrust. Yet the kind of authority that heaven recognizes bears little resemblance to earthly rule. It is not seized by ambition or inherited through rank. It is bestowed by divine design. Every human being, whether aware of it or not, carries within them an imprint of that original commission spoken long ago, the call to govern creation with wisdom and mercy, to be a reflection of divine sovereignty in the realm of the tangible. Demons understand this truth far better than we do. They see in you the remnants of a throne they once defied. To them, your very existence is a reminder that authority was never theirs to possess. They tremble not at human strength, but at the invisible seal upon the human soul. It is the seal of divine image, that radiant likeness that grants you command, not by force of will, but by alignment with truth. The irony is that while many humans leave unaware of their authority, the powers of darkness never forget it. They work endlessly to hide from you the inheritance they can never reclaim. This unseen authority is not loud. It does not shout nor demand attention. It moves quietly like gravity, shaping the unseen structure of reality. When you speak truth in a world of lies, when you pray with faith that cuts through despair, when you resist temptation not by strength but by trust, you are exercising that hidden dominion. To the demonic realm, such acts are declarations of jurisdiction, reminders that they trespass upon holy ground. For every person who remembers who they are, the kingdom of darkness shrinks a little more. The ancient tempter's strategy has always been the same: to persuade you that you are powerless, insignificant, a pawn in forces beyond your control. He fears nothing more than the awakening of his soul to its royal calling. For when a man or woman begins to realize that they bear the authority of heaven's ambassador, every whisper of deceit loses its grip. Evil depends entirely on illusion. It cannot withstand recognition. To know your authority is to see through the trick. Consider how even a child who believes can speak words that cause the enemy to flee. There is no magic in the syllables themselves. The power lies in the one who listens. The universe bends not to human eloquence, but to divine alignment. When your will harmonizes with the will of the eternal, creation itself echoes your command. The enemy knows this law. He has seen it before, when prophets spoke and storms obeyed, when humble hearts defied empires, when forgiveness shattered chains stronger than iron. He has watched countless times as authority clothed in humility unmade his proudest designs. The unseen authority within you operates on the principle of correspondence. It does not originate from you, but through you. You are a conduit, a mirror, a vessel. When you act in accordance with truth, you do not create power, you release it. The enemy knows that if you were ever to truly trust this, his influence would collapse like smoke in wind. Thus he entangles you in distractions, in pride or self-pity, in every subtle thought that says you are unworthy to command. But worthiness was never the measure, surrender was. The authority you bear is not the privilege of saints or sages. It is the birthright of every soul awakened to the reality of its maker. It cannot be stolen, only forgotten. The darkness survives on your forgetfulness, feeding upon your hesitation to believe that heaven itself stands behind your words. Love is the one force in all creation that evil cannot imitate. It can mimic piety, counterfeit wisdom, even disguise itself as beauty, but true love remains utterly alien to its nature. For love is self-giving, and hell is forever curved inward. The very shape of love contradicts the anatomy of darkness, which feeds only by taking. Every act of love, no matter how small or unnoticed, is therefore an act of rebellion against the entire infernal order. Demons fear love because it is the purest reflection of the eternal. It is not sentiment nor weakness, nor a fragile emotion easily broken by cruelty. Love is fire, consuming, relentless, radiant, and wherever it burns, darkness cannot remain. The enemy's greatest despair is to see love take root in a human heart, for once it has begun to grow, it cannot be contained. It spreads from thought to word, from gesture to action, until it transforms even suffering into light. The one who loves purely is untouchable, for no cruelty can reach where love has made its dwelling. There is a strange paradox that confounds the enemy, that love is strongest when it seems most broken. When a person chooses to forgive while still bleeding, to bless the one who betrayed them, to pray for those who mock them, the entire architecture of hell shakes. For in that moment, a human mirrors divine nature itself, the love that gave while despised, that bled for those who struck the blow. This, above all, the demons cannot endure. They can corrupt intellect, distort pleasure, and pervert justice, but they cannot counterfeit sacrificial love. It burns too hot. It carries the scent of heaven. The enemy labors then to twist love into lesser forms of obsession, control, vanity disguised as devotion. He tries to make love about possession rather than gift, about self rather than other. He knows that as long as love bends inward, it ceases to be love at all. He fears the kind of love that expects nothing in return, the kind that gives without calculation. That is the love that builds eternity, that binds the broken into unity, that restores the image of the divine within dust. Every time you choose love when it costs you something, when you are tired, unseen, misunderstood, a chasm opens between you and the powers of darkness. They cannot cross it. They cannot endure the light that radiates from a heart surrendered to love. Even in the smallest choices, a word of patience, a moment of gentleness, a refusal to speak ill, there is a kind of sacred defiance. You are declaring with quiet authority that hate will not rule here, that bitterness will not have the final word. It is easy to believe that love is fragile because it so often wears the garments of humility. It does not boast or shout, it suffers silently. Yet to the eyes of heaven, love is the strongest thing that exists. It is the pulse of creation, the law beneath all laws. To love is to join oneself to the rhythm of eternity. To hate is to step outside of reality altogether. That is why demons cannot bear the presence of one who loves, because such a person becomes unbearably real. They exist only in shadow, and love is unbearable light. Love is not learned through comfort but through surrender. It is the great reversal. The more you give, the more you have. The more you forgive, the freer you become. The enemy cannot comprehend such arithmetic, for his empire is built upon scarcity and fear. He does not understand how one heart can continue to give without losing, how it can break and yet shine brighter through the cracks. Among all the gifts granted to humanity, none is more mysterious or more feared by the forces of darkness than the power to choose. Free will, that quiet, relentless freedom, is the hinge of both heaven and hell. It is the flame that cannot be coerced, the one thing no power, celestial or infernal, can wrest from the human soul. For even the smallest act of choice is a declaration of sovereignty, a whisper that says, I am not a puppet, I am a person. Demons dread this freedom because it is the image of their defeat. They are bound by their rebellion. They chose once and for all, and their choice became their prison. They no longer possess the capacity to turn toward the light. Humanity, however, lives in a continual dawn of decision. Every morning, every moment, you stand at the crossroads of eternity. Each thought and each action echoes into unseen realms, affirming one kingdom or the other. That is why temptation always appeals to your choices, not because darkness can force you, but because it must persuade you. To choose is to wield creative power. When you decide to speak truth rather than deceit, to hope rather than despair, you are shaping the moral fabric of the universe itself. The angels see it. They marvel that such frail creatures have been entrusted with so vast a responsibility. The demons see it. They rage that your yes or no can rewrite destinies. Every soul, however obscure, carries within it the capacity to turn history by a single choice. And this terrifies the enemy, for his dominion depends entirely upon apathy, upon your failure to decide. He fears your awareness of choice more than the choice itself, for as long as you drift, he wins. As soon as you awaken, he trembles. He whispers that you are powerless, that circumstances have already written your story. that your will is too weak to matter. But that is the grand deceit. The truth is that every decision, however small, is a spark of divine likeness. Even a hesitant step toward goodness breaks the rhythm of hell. The faintest yes to the light echoes louder than the shouts of those who serve the dark. Choice, in its truest form, is not the indulgence of whim, but the alignment of will with what is real. The freedom to choose does not mean the absence of law. It means participation in the highest order of it. When you choose rightly, you join your will to the will that shaped the stars. When you choose wrongly, you break harmony with the design that sustains you. Yet even then, the power to choose remains. That is what drives the enemy to madness, that your very failure can become a new beginning if you so decide. No fall is final until you consent to stay fallen. The tempter cannot bear that truth. He must convince you that choice has ended, that your path is set, that repentance is too late. He must weave despair around your freedom until you no longer recognize it. But the moment you lift your will, even trembling, even uncertain, something eternal stirs. The machinery of redemption moves. Heaven listens. The cosmos shifts its weight ever so slightly toward light. For though you are small, your choosing is immense. It is the echo of the first command given to humanity: to rule, to steward, to respond. Every choice is a seed of that ancient mandate, bearing within it both peril and glory. The enemy cannot overpower your will, he can only beguile it. He cannot tear the pen from your hand, he can only whisper what to write. But you remain the author of your allegiance, and every page you turn is written with the ink of your own decision. There is a strange glory in the scars of the soul, a kind of beauty that only suffering can forge. To the world, wounds are marks of defeat, reminders of failure, weakness, or loss. Yet in the unseen realm, those same wounds, once touched by grace, become emblems of authority. Demons fear them not because they are signs of pain, but because they are signs of transformation. They mark the places where darkness struck and was overcome. The enemy rejoices when you fall. He delights in the bleeding, the breaking, the long nights of despair when it seems all hope has fled. But what he cannot predict, what he has never understood, is how pain, when surrendered to the eternal, becomes the very soil of redemption. The things he meant for ruin are turned against him. Every scar becomes a story of survival, every wound a testimony of light stronger than shadow. He knows only how to destroy, he cannot comprehend restoration, and that is why your redeemed wounds fill him with dread. When a human being suffers and still clings to hope, the order of hell trembles. The enemy has seen it before in the garden where betrayal blossomed into resurrection, in the martyrs who sang while flames devoured them, in the broken hearts that became instruments of mercy. He knows that pain has a peculiar alchemy in the hands of heaven. What it touches, it refines. What it burns, it purifies. To be wounded and still love, to be broken and still trust, that is the miracle he cannot counterfeit. Demons understand wounds as they understand chains, tools of imprisonment. They cannot fathom how the same wounds can become wings. To them, suffering is the ultimate victory, the proof that goodness is fragile and faith is foolish. But when a wounded soul rises again, carrying the very marks of its suffering as symbols of power, the deception collapses. The enemy loses not only the battle but the weapon itself. For once a wound is redeemed, it can never be used against you again. There is no creature more dangerous to the powers of darkness than the one who has walked through pain and found meaning on the other side. Such a person cannot be easily threatened, cannot be easily deceived. They have already faced the worst and found that even there in the ashes something divine was waiting. Their tears become sacred water, their memories altars of remembrance, and every time they speak of what they endured, light spreads further into the shadows. The enemy would prefer you to remain silent about your wounds, to hide them beneath pride, to cover them with distraction, to pretend they never existed. He whispers that healing is weakness, that vulnerability is shame. But he knows the truth. A wound confessed becomes a doorway for grace. When you bring your pain into the light, it loses its power to imprison you. The demons cannot inhabit what has been exposed. They dwell only in the hidden, the unspoken, the festering secret. That is why they fear your honesty more than your strength. To be redeemed does not mean to forget the pain, but to see it differently. The same memory that once poisoned you becomes a source of compassion. The same sorrow that once crushed you becomes the wisdom by which you comfort others. In this way, your scars preach a gospel the enemy cannot silence. They speak of the unbreakable truth that even suffering can be sanctified. They are proof that love has touched the worst and made it holy. The powers of darkness are baffled by this mystery, that brokenness can become strength, that loss can become offering, that death itself can give birth to life. They do not understand a kingdom where the wounded are crowned, where the last become first, where the meek inherit what the mighty could not seize. Every time a human heart allows its pain to be transfigured into mercy, they see the reflection of a victory they once thought impossible. The scars you bear are not merely remnants of the past. They are seals of ownership, marks that you have passed through fire and emerged as something more dangerous than before. A soul that knows the cost of light and still chooses it. The enemy cannot imitate this. He has never known redemption, only regret. He can wound, but he cannot heal. He can break, but he cannot rebuild. Your redeemed wounds, therefore, stand as eternal reminders that even his triumphs are temporary, that even his greatest strikes are destined to become his downfall. Demons fear your destiny because it is fixed in a place they can never reach. They have seen the scroll written long before your birth, the one inscribed with purpose, calling, and inheritance, a destiny intertwined with the will of the eternal. They know its weight. They have glimpsed what you are meant to become, a creature radiant with glory, a being of light forged in the likeness of God. And that vision is agony to them, for once, long ago, they stood in the presence of that same glory and turned away. Now they see its reflection awakening in you, and it burns like judgment. The human story, from the first breath to the final dawn, is not a tragedy but a pilgrimage. You are not made for dust, though you walk among it. You were fashioned for eternity, shaped for communion with the infinite. Every heartbeat is a note in a symphony that began before the foundations of the world. The demons know the melody. They have heard it in the corridors of heaven. That is why they do everything in their power to make you deaf to it. They fill the air with noise, fear, distraction, vanity, anything to drown the music of destiny calling you home. They fear your destiny because it reveals their defeat. For every soul that awakens to its eternal identity is a proclamation that their rebellion failed. You were meant to inherit what they lost, the joy of unbroken fellowship, the authority of divine partnership, the endless expansion of love into creation. Every time you lift your gaze beyond the temporary, you remind them of what they forfeited, not merely power, but belonging. The enemy cannot bear the thought that dust and breath humanity, frail and flawed, will sit enthroned in the very places he desired to occupy. Your destiny was not designed for comfort, but for transformation. You are being shaped, even now, by trials and time, by grief and grace, into something more enduring than stone or star. The journey is long because eternity is vast. The hand of the eternal crafts patiently, chiseling away pride, fear, and falsehood, until what remains is a soul capable of bearing glory without shattering beneath it. Demons hate this process, for they see the refinement of your pain and recognize the signature of heaven. What they interpret as suffering is in truth the slow unveiling of royalty. They also fear the permanence of your destiny. Their existence is decay, a long, unending dying, a collapse inward upon themselves. Yours is the opposite, an ascent. You move ever upward, from shadow into light, from time into timelessness. Even death, their last weapon, is powerless against the soul that knows its destination. They can wound the body, disturb the mind, whisper into the night, but they cannot unwrite what has been written. The destiny sealed by divine breath cannot be annulled by infernal speech. That immutable decree that you were made to dwell in eternal communion is their despair. To them, you are a prophecy in motion. Every act of goodness, every moment of faith, is a line of that prophecy fulfilled. They see not only what you are, but what you will be, a creature fully alive, clothed in incorruptible light. It is why temptation is so desperate, why distraction is so constant. If they can keep you earthbound in thought, they may at least dim your awareness of the heights prepared for you. But even their success is temporary, for destiny does not depend on your perfection, but on divine persistence. Grace pursues even when you flee. The hound of heaven does not lose its scent. Your eternal destiny is the reason they cannot rest. They hear the ticking of time differently than you do. To them, each passing moment brings them closer to the hour when the veil will lift, and every soul will stand revealed in its true form. They will see with horror that those they mocked and tempted, the fragile, stumbling humans, have become what they once were meant to be. And worse, what they can never again become. For in that day humanity will shine not with borrowed light, but with inherent glory, transfigured by union with the Eternal Himself. Even now, traces of that destiny leak through. It shows in your longing for meaning, your hunger for beauty, your ache for permanence. These desires are not accidents, they are prophecies of what is to come. The enemy twists them into idols, hoping you will mistake the echo for the song. Yet the true sound persists, that deep, wordless yearning that nothing temporal can satisfy. The demons cannot silence it. They can only mock it, because they have no counterpart to it in their own hearts. They were cut off from longing when they cut themselves off from love. You, however, still possess both. They also fear your destiny because it reveals the economy of grace, that heaven rejoices not in the perfect but in the redeemed. They understand justice but not mercy. They comprehend order but not love. When they see your story, your failures, your returns, your small victories through grace, they are reminded of a truth they cannot endure, that the Eternal delights in restoring what they have ruined. For every soul lifted from despair, their power diminishes. Every redemption is a wound in their kingdom. Every salvation, a proclamation that love outlasts rebellion. There is something else they fear still more deeply, that your destiny is communal. It is not only about what you become individually, but what humanity becomes together. The tapestry of the redeemed will one day outshine all the constellations, countless souls woven into one radiant harmony. The demons see glimpses of it when people forgive, when strangers show mercy, when divided hearts are reconciled. Those moments are fragments of the coming whole, hints of the eternal city where no shadow remains. They cannot endure such unity, for their nature is division. Where love binds, they scatter. Where truth unites, they fracture. Each act of reconciliation is a prelude to their undoing. Your eternal destiny is a narrative written in the ink of immortality, stretching beyond galaxies and generations. It is the secret the enemy dares not speak aloud, that you are not a passing creature of dust, but a citizen of a kingdom without end. The shadows fear you because your very existence foretells their end, because within your finite frame burns the seed of the infinite, because every breath you take moves history closer to the hour. when the light will rise and never set again. If only you could see yourself as heaven sees you, you would never again doubt your worth, nor tremble before the darkness. For within you burns a light that the shadows cannot touch, an authority that commands without shouting, a love that conquers without violence, a freedom that even angels respect. Wounds that have become weapons of grace, and a destiny that stretches beyond the horizon of time. The enemy sees all this. He sees what you carry, what you are meant to become, and it terrifies him. That is why his first assault is always upon your vision. He would rather you believe you are ordinary, fragile, forgettable. For if he can blind you to what you are, he can silence the song that shakes his kingdom. But the truth remains unaltered. You are not what fear says you are. You are not what failure suggests, nor what your past has tried to define. You are a fragment of eternity clothed in mortal skin, a living paradox of weakness and divine fire. When you stand, heaven stands with you. When you speak truth, creation listens. When you love, darkness retreats. When you choose rightly, the very fabric of the unseen bends toward light. So do not shrink from your brightness. Do not apologize for your fire. The powers that oppose you already know what you are capable of. It is time you did too. Walk as one who remembers that every shadow is temporary, that every wound can be redeemed, that every step taken in love rewrites the story of the world. For though the night still lingers, morning is certain, and the light within you is not waiting for permission to rise.